Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is half Swedish on the home side, half German on the away side. Both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel before, albeit the Swedish brewery far more often and frequently than the German one. And in fact, with the German brewery, I do still need to do a solo brewery or dedicated beer review to these guys because they are very good in my experience. But the beer we're having a look at today is the second of two collaborations that these guys did very recently. It's a style that I know both breweries can do very, very well, and it's also one of the Swedish brewery's latest releases through its Systembolaget here in Sweden. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up toward Gothenburg once again, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that catchphrase in when we're reviewing the Gothenburg beers. This is for the home side of course. We're going to go out to the kind of northeast-ish of the city to Landvetter, right next to the airport, and we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Dugges Bryggeri. So this particular beer is called Orbital Dreamboat. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and this is another New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. But this one also happens to be brewed in collaboration with Fuerst Wiacek, who are from Siemensstadt in Berlin down in Germany. So yeah, this beer was released as part of the Lokalt Osmoskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for February of 2023, and it was released along with another one which you saw me review a couple of videos back. But yeah, these guys did two IPAs together, having met at the Mikkeller Beer Festival in Copenhagen. I think it was last year actually. They decided to collaborate and now they're releasing them through Systembolaget here in Sweden. I don't know if Fuerst Wiacek rebrewed the beer down in Germany of course, but yeah, this one is the Swedish release. But yeah, let's crack on with this and see what we have then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about both the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done both from Dugges Bryggeri and from Fuerst Wiacek, and we will no doubt add more to both of those lists at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So go up to the search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from your local area or whatever you search for, they should pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries, and there are playlists from many different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish and German playlist because it is dual nationality, but do check out some other stuff as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and we'll chat a little bit about Dugges Bryggeri first, since they are the home brewery in this case. So yeah, Dugges Bryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Landvetter on the outskirts of Gothenburg on the Swedish west coast. But the brewery was established back originally in 2005 in Mölndal to the south of the city by Mikael Engström Dugge, whom of course it takes its name from. So a few years prior to this, Mikael had met an Englishman who was selling second-hand brew kits, and this got him thinking about brewing his own beer. So he studied the admittedly very complex Swedish alcohol laws. He went around and visited other breweries that were already existing in the country, I think the likes of Nynäs Hamon Bryggeri and Nils Oskar and things like this, and then he started buying up equipment to put together his own brewery, which culminated in the opening of the first Dugges facility in Mölndal back in 2005. Over the following years, he started to build the reputation for his beers. He kind of developed a lot of new recipes and things like this, and they proved to be very popular, and by 2009 the brewery had outgrown their original facility, and so they made the decision to move up to Landvetter the following year, and they did that in 2010. But the older brewery had a capacity of 1,500 hectolitres of beer per year at maximum. However, the new brewery started off with a capacity of 8,000 hectolitres per year, and this has been more than doubled in recent years from what I understand. But over the years, the brewery have become very well known for quite a few different things. In the early days, these guys were known for their big imperial stouts and also for their fruity sour beers, but in more recent times they've diversified quite a lot, and they've had a good few different series of beers. They had the fresh and the Crush series, which were different kinds of New England IPAs. They had the Bite series, which were the West Coast IPAs. I believe those series have kind of been retired now though, but they've got their Future series, which is their barrel aging program. And they've also got the Mega series, which are their very high alcohol imperial stouts, at least 15% from what I remember. But yeah, a couple of the cult classic beers that you should really try from Dugges Bryggeri, in my opinion, would be the Egypt, which is their imperial stout, their classic imperial stout. They also have the Big Egypt as well, which I think is slightly stronger, but they also have the Tropic Thunder, which in my mind is the kind of cult classic Swedish sour beer. That was a collaboration, of course, with Stillwater Artisanal. And over the years, Dugges Bryggeri have brewed a number of beers for Omnipollo, the imperial stouts, and they've also done quite a few Stillwater Artisanal things as well, actually. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Dugges Bryggeri for the moment. But you know, you should go and try some of their beers. They're also one of the co-owners of the Brewers Beer Bars in Gothenburg, which you'll find. They are co-owned as well by Electric Nurse Brewing, which is run by Mikael's daughter Ida and her husband John, and also the guys at All In Brewing, who are one of the numerous gypsy breweries operating in and around Gothenburg. But yeah, as I say, Dugges Bryggeri, one of the most respected names in Swedish craft beer. They do quite a few different styles, and they are definitely worth trying if you get the chance. But yeah, that's all I can tell you about them just now. If you want to learn more, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. The only thing I'd say about the Untappd page is that there are not enough of the Dugges Brewery beers listed, because yeah, it says something like they've only produced 55 beers, which is a lot of nonsense. These guys have done it far more than that. So yeah, I think the guys at Dugges need to go and actually sit and make the list of all their beers. Actually, I'd be very interested to see that. But yeah, let's go on to the German side of things and talk a little bit about Fuerst Wiacek. So Fuerst Wiacek, as I've mentioned to you already, were originally a gypsy brewery, and they started off in Berlin, and the company was founded back in 2015 by Lukas Wiacek and Georg Fuerst. So Georg has a background in digital media and operations, whereas Lukas worked with web and graphic design, but he was also a very keen rally or racing driver, and apparently he won a camel from a Germany to Jordan rally, and that's a true story, but even though it sounds quite funny. But apparently Lukas and Georg wanted to make some whiskey together, and they experimented with different liqueurs as well, but they went on to take a course at Beer Lab in Friedrichshain in Berlin, and they learned how to cook wort for whiskey while also trying their hand at brewing some beer. They did manage to produce whiskey apparently, but they found that the beer they could make was considerably better than the whiskey, so they decided to kind of stick to that route. But Lukas went on to do a number of internships at different breweries such as Pohjola in Estonia, Beavertown in London in England, Boneyard in Oregon in the US, and he also took part in a few brews at Half Acre in Chicago in Illinois in the US, and also at the Caracal Brewery in Jordan as well. But in early 2016 they produced their first large-scale beer at the old Kambach Brewery in Gundelfingen in Bavaria, which is down near Augsburg in the kind of southwest of the state. And both of these guys have actually just been working very hard and built up the brewery over the last few years. They've both been working full-time with Fuerst Wiacek since March of 2019, and they've now established their own brewing facility in Siemensstadt in Berlin. But as of February 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 190 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and most of these are different kinds of IPAs and also sour beers as well. But yeah, like I said, Fuerst Wiacek are a brewery that I really need to review properly for you on the channel in a dedicated beer review, so we will see about getting some of their beers in Copenhagen the next time I head over there. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Fuerst Wiacek for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, then you can obviously check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at this beer and see what it's all about. So as you can see, this one is a half-litre can, very similar to the last one we had from Dugges Bryggeri. There you can see the Dugges D at the top. You can also see this one here as well. It says around and around, this one, which is kind of cool. It says on the side here, this is Orbital Dreamboat, a circular spinning juicy movement by something you are inclined towards, a thing bursting with tropical notes, constantly moving, spinning away like Mercury orbits the sun. Our subject also moves around something forever. So yeah, pretty cool. But it tells you on the side here, this one is hopped with Citra, Eldorado and Mosaic. We know these hops quite well. All three of them are American. Eldorado is about 12% alpha acid from what I remember, and it gives you a really nice kind of pineapple-y and mango note. Citra, about 14% alpha acid, big, kind of strong, more pungent passion fruit, some grapefruit as well, a little bit of mango, and also a quite lemon-limey component. Mosaic, 14% alpha acid again, and it's mainly kind of tangerine that you're going to get from that. But here you can see the Dugges D once again. You also have the other Dugges Bryggeri symbol there, and then down in the corner here you can see Fuerst Wiacek as well. But yeah, 500ml can, this one, which is a little bit unusual for Sweden, I would say, not for Germany. But yeah, this beer I believe cost me 55 Swedish kroner, so that's about €5.50, £5 sterling, somewhere in the region of $6 American. And as I said before, it was released as part of the Lockout Småskaligt for February of 2022 through Systembolaget here in Sweden. But yeah, Dugges Orbital Dreamboat, 6.5%, New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. So yeah, there we are. I have to say that does look very nice. The last one that we had involving these two looked very, very good as well. The name of it's gone right out of my head though. Don't know if I think I've still got the can somewhere. Yeah, it'll be about somewhere. Anyway. So, anyway, as you can see, this beer is poured pretty much as you would expect from a New England IPA. So this one for me is a very, very bright yellow colour. It looks pretty much like mango juice. I always like comparing New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what the appearance reminds me of. I think we've maybe got about, 4/5, 80% of the beer out into the glass. Just a little bit under that actually, I can see the mark on the glass there, but yeah, it does look very nice. But yeah, before the head disappears on this one, we can see that it poured with about a 2/3 or 3/4 finger of a frothy, I would actually say perfect white head. That is fading away to be a thinner foamy layer on top though, and you can see the bubbles in this one are quite small in size. I'll just let you have a little look at that. Yeah, I can see the camera is focusing on that quite nicely, but it looks very, very good. In terms of the colour of this beer, like I say, a very kind of bright yellow mango juice colour. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But yeah, you don't often have to care about that when it comes to New England Hazy IPAs, of course. But yeah, the level of haze in this one for a 6.5%er is pretty impressive. Haze in these beers, of course, depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree the yeast. This whole combination can vary from brewery to brewery, even beer to beer. There's not really a rule about, going up the alcohol scale and things, as you might think. But yeah, certainly looks the part, this one, I have to say. Let's have a wee look at the aroma and just see what it's going to have in store for us. So yeah, nothing else we need to say about the appearance of this one. Not a lot in the way of visible carbonation either. Let's just take a wee look at that aroma and see what we have. Oh yeah. I do like to think that if I was given an IPA to smell blind, I might have to be told it's a Swedish one, right enough. But if I was told that, I do like to think that I could pick out a Dugges IPA. There's just something very, very distinctive about them, and it must be the type of malts that they're using and the ratios they are, because the Dugges beers just have this really distinctive smoothness and bready character to them, I have to say, and I'm getting that straight away out of this one. But it's a lovely smelling beer, this one. Good little bit, for me, it's on the New England side of things, it's quite, very barley malty and bready. You're getting a little bit of the oats as well. It's got quite a creaminess to it. Lovely kind of soft but still slightly bright green component, and then the juicy tropical fruits sitting on top of it as well. But like I say, very, very nice smelling beer, this one, I have to say, so a big thumbs up from me. But let's break this aroma down and just describe it for you a wee bit more in depth before we actually taste the beer. So, on the malty side of things, then the first thing you're going to get out of this beer, the backbone of it, is a little bit of that fresh white bready bread crust. So the way that goes together is really, really nice. So yeah, lovely little bit of a fresh white bready bread crust in there, and then on top of that you have a little bit of you can smell that lovely kind of fresh, fluffy white bread in there. There's maybe a little touch of a crackery or a woody note to this one, but it's not too prominent actually. This beer really is a little bit of soft bread crust, lovely fluffy white bread, and I think it goes together very, very nicely for sure. Aroma wise, on top of that, you're getting a wee bit more. I do get a little bit more wheat out of this one the more that I smell it, and the wheat, while it really acts for the most part as a kind of a kind of smoothing agent for the most part, it does give you a little bit of bitiness in the back of the nose, and then you've also got a little bit of you do have a little bit of smoothness though in the middle of the nose, I would say. But there's a good little bit of oaty character to this one too. And yeah, the oats for me are still quite creamy, but you do get a little bit of dryness out of them. That's one of the things with Systembolaget here in Sweden. You don't, quite often with some of these IPAs, you don't get them in their prime freshness because they are going to sit for a couple of weeks in the warehouses rather than going straight on the shelves. Systembolaget, in my mind, do need to work on cold chain if that's going to be the case. But they also need to, they also need to just kind of speed the process up a little bit for the Swedish breweries, I would say, and make it a little bit easier. But as I say, with the oaty character, it's always a good indicator of how fresh your beer is, because the creamier the oats are, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older it is. But yeah, you can smell this one. This one I think is still in fairly good condition, and like I say, the last one that we had was also in fairly good condition as well. I think this is maybe about 4 to maybe 6 weeks old in the can, but yeah, it smells pretty decent. On top of that though, you're getting a little bit of a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. So the way that goes together is very, very nice. I think that covers the malty side of the beer, to be honest. Let's have a wee look at the hoppy side of things. So green component for me, it does actually have quite a little bit of floral character to it, this one. There's a teeny little bit of earthiness, but not a lot. Like I say, a little bit of, but mainly for me, it's quite a bright floral character you're getting out of this one. And there's also a little bit of zesty note from the grass as well. I'm not really too familiar with the green component of El Dorado, I have to admit. But I think the little bit of earthiness is most likely to come from the Mosaic, and the Citra, the one that's going to give you the more zesty, grassy character, to be honest with you. But yeah, remember with New England IPAs, these tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, so the green component smells a lot brighter compared to the more dank character that you're going to get from the more deep and dank character you'll get from a West Coast IPA, and that comes down to the types of hopping that you do. So remember, early addition hopping, that gives you most of your bitterness, and that is those hops are put in within the first hour of the wort boil. Late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, that gives you a little bit of bitterness but mainly flavour and aroma. And then dry hopping, which comes after the wort boil has taken place, gives you mainly that mainly gives you flavour and aroma, of course. So like I say, New England IPAs rely on the latter two. West Coast IPAs use all three, generally speaking. But yeah, with this one you can smell the green component is quite bright, which indicates late addition and dry hopping. But on the fruity side of things, this beer is pretty much what you'd expect if you know these hops. There's a little bit of a pungent passion fruit and grapefruit in there, but not too much. Lots of mango for me, again, which is, definitely lots of mango in this one for me. There's a little bit of an apricot-y note to it, but quite a bit of a more oily pineapple, which I think is most likely to be the El Dorado. Pardon me. So yeah, because I think the other one had, if I remember rightly, the last collaboration we had, the name, as I say, has gone right out of my head, but the last one had 4 different hops in it, but it still had Citra and Mosaic in it. So yeah, for me, the difference with this one is the more oily pineapple, and then yeah, you've got that kind of tangerine-y, oily, orangey note from the Mosaic in this one as well. Maybe a little touch of maybe just a little touch of a kind of slightly limey note underneath there as well. But yeah, very, very nice smelling beer, this one, I have to say, but nothing kind of out of the ordinary for either Dugges or Fuerst Wiacek. I've tried quite a few of Fuerst Wiacek's IPAs on tap at work. We get their stuff in very regularly, of course. But yeah, that's everything we need to say about the aroma. So let's just put a wee bit more in, get a little bit more foam on it. There we go. I think it's time to taste this one. So yeah, this is the Orbital Dreamboat 6.5% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Dugges Bryggeri in Landvetter near Gothenburg, and Fuerst Wiacek from Siemensstadt in Berlin. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah. First impression, very creamy, very smooth. New England IPA, this one. You know, nice and easy to drink. Can't complain about this at all. I like this, you know. Thumbs up to both breweries. As I say, these days I'm a little bit more interested in lagers and things like that. I'm really into lagers. I'm a big kind of malty beers again. But I do still enjoy an IPA every so often. And these ones that Dugges are doing are always, you know, solid and drinkable. You can't knock them. So yeah, another just solid beer from both of these breweries, I have to say. But the first impression I have of this one, in terms of the flavour, it's got a wee bit more of a kind of wheaty component to it. It's got a good bit of the bready character as well that we were expecting. The green component's nice and bright. Then you've also got that juicy sort of fruity kind of note to it as well. So yeah, the way this goes together is really nice in that sense. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, let's just break this beer down and describe it a wee bit more in depth. So, for me, backbone of this beer, you've got a good little bit of that kind of fresh, white bready bread crust of the beer just forming the backbone. That goes right across the middle of your palate. Further forward on that, you've got a little touch of a kind of woody character to it. Yeah, there's a little bit of a woody character to this one just toward the front of that middle third of your palate. And you can feel on top of that there's a little bit of a kind of, you know, crackery, Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing coming out of this beer. So yeah, the way it goes together in that sense is also very nice. But yeah, I do certainly like how all of this goes together actually. But yeah, on top of that crackery layer, you get the fluffy, fresh white bread out of this one. That's from the barley malt, of course. Then you can feel, it's actually a very nice fluffy white bread, but then on top of that you can feel the wheaty layer, and the wheat has a little bit more density to it than the barley malt for sure. But then above all of that, you've got a wee bit more of yeah, you can feel the oaty character just sitting above the wheat, and the wheat does have a little touch of bitiness to it, I have to say. So yeah, the wheat does have that little bit of bitiness to it, but then above all of that, you get the oaty character, and the oaty character in this beer for me is quite interesting. If you go right down the middle line of your palate, you can feel the beer just has a little bit more of a kind of smooth and creamy character there, but as you move out toward the edges of the palate, it's a little bit more kind of, it does have a little bit more dryness to it, and it's within that kind of oaty dryness that you start to get a little bit of the more bitey component of the wheat coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice. Now there is a little touch of sweet component in this beer as well. Like in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there's a little touch of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing coming out of the beer. And again, I really do like how that goes together. So as you move out toward the edges of that middle third of your palate, there's a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. I do wonder if there's a bit of golden promise in this beer. There's just something very familiar about it. So yeah, the golden promise. I do think there's a little bit of golden promise in this beer, but I will say the malty side of this beer sweetens up the further into the aftertaste that you go. But as I quite often say in reviews, for me in New England IPAs, you've got 6 different components that you can think about. The sort of farmhousey, yeasty side of the beer, and also the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those are a bit more common in American brewed New England IPAs. I would hasten to add that. On top of that, you have the barley malt bread, the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, and also the kind of sweet component of the beer as well. So yeah, you've got these kind of 4 other things that they're a bit more common in the European brewed IPAs, but also in the American brewed ones as well. But yeah, as I say, the way that this goes together is really, it really is quite nice in that sense. But yeah, the malt base in this one, this beer for me really leans a bit more, now that I've tasted it, it leans a bit more, the wheat comes out a little bit more, you've also got the oats in there and the barley malt bread. It's quite balanced between those 3 things, and it does show you a wee bit of sweet component as well. Yeah, it's interesting this actually, I like it. To me it's a little bit more wheaty and bitey than some of the other Dugges ones we've had in recent times. But yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate, though. Let's look at the back third of the palate. The border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of bready build up in there, kind of white bready character. The base of that back third of your beer though has a little bit more of a kind of grainy, it does have a little bit more of a kind of grainy bread crusty character to it there. You can certainly feel that the bread crusty notes are that little touch more grainy. Above that, you've got a little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing to it as well, and you can feel that that is just a little bit drier. For me, the more dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, and you're definitely noticing that these types of flavours you're getting out of this beer are a wee bit more kind of yeah, bitter and grainy than you might get otherwise. But on top of that kind of crackery layer, you can feel the fluffy white bread in there. That layer is a little bit more airy, and it's also a little bit taller, and then you start to get the wheaty notes on top of that, and the wheat on the back third of the palate just has that little bit more kind of bitiness out of it, which I do really quite like. And then above everything else, you've got a wee bit more of a kind of farmhousey, you've got a wee bit more of a kind of farmhousey, just light white bread, and you've got a wee touch of kind of like honeycomby type flavour in there as well. But yeah, like back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller. Than as you come forward into the middle third of the palate, it just kind of squashes down and condenses together a little bit more. Malt base on this one is quite nice, and the more that I go into the aftertaste with it, there's a bit more wheatiness comes out, but it also has that light, airy, kind of bready character coming out of it too, which is quite nice. Yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty side of the beer. So let's go on to the green component then, and the hoppy side. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it gets a little touch herbal, but as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, it's definitely a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic for sure. And in fairness, yeah, it does show you a little bit of bitterness too from the floral component. There is a wee touch of dankness in there too, so I wonder if there has been a little bit more early edition hop with this one, but the earthiness certainly comes from the mosaic. The floral character, I think, comes a wee bit more from the Citra and the Eldorado. But round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, a wee touch zesty as well, which I certainly enjoy. But yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense is also very, very nice. But yeah, I like this. I do like how this goes together, for sure. Yeah, so I think that covers everything in on the green component there. On the front third of your palate then, the fruity side of things, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you do get a nice little bit of bready build up in there, which is good. Then the base of that front third of your palate, there's a little touch of bread crust there, the smooth white bready notes, and then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on that. So yeah, on the fruity side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect if you know these hops, to be honest with you. It's a very straight shooting beer, this one, in that sense. Nothing surprising, but it's just nicely done. But yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, there's a little tiny touch of grapefruit in there. That's going to be the Citra. And as you move further forward, you get a little bit of a stronger passion fruit. And then beyond that, as you move toward the middle of the front third of your palate, you can feel lots and lots of juicy mango in there. And as you reach that midpoint on the front third of your palate, you can feel the beer. It's got a little touch of apricot, a little bit of a drier apricot underneath, but then you get the more oily pineapple sitting on top, which I have to say I really do quite like as well. But as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you definitely get a little bit more. You absolutely get a little bit more of a kind of tangerine-y, orangey character coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is very, very nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that sense. Yeah, so that kind of absolutely, that sort of that kind of just oily tangerine note from the Mosaic is really nice in this one. But the pineapple, as I say, the more oily pineapple I think is from the Eldorado. Then you've got the Citra sitting further back. So kind of, for me, this beer is very much at the back of that front third of your palate. It's more the Citra. As you reach the middle, it's more the Eldorado, and as you reach the front, it's a little bit more of the Mosaic. The only other thing I'd add to that fruity part that I'm picking up is that there's a little bit of kind of limey character just behind the front tip of the tongue, and I think that's most likely attributed to the Citra, because it can give you that little bit of lemon limey character. So yeah, for me, that is quite interesting in this one. But yeah, in terms of the I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of the beer. In terms of the mouthfeel, for me, this is right in the middle of the road, mid-bodied, carbonation is very smooth. It's got a little bit of cleanliness to it, this beer, but it's got a little bit of creaminess as well. It's very typical of Dugges, this one. It's the typical Dugges New England IPA mouthfeel, kind of clean, but at the same time still quite smooth and a little touch creamy. In terms of the IBUs of the beer, I would say this is a fairly standard sort of 30-ish IBU offering. You do get a nice little bit of floral aromaticity and a little touch of bitterness out of the green component of the beer, which I do like. The malt base, as we said, it has a little bit of dryness underneath. It's quite smooth in the middle. It's got a little bit of bitiness at the back and just a little touch of sweetness as well. In the fruity side of this beer, it's mainly tropical for me, but it does give you that more kind of oily, orangey, citrusy note that you'd expect of the Mosaic too. But overall, just another very, very nice and easygoing, drinkable New England IPA from Dugges Bryggeri. And I always enjoy reviewing these ones. It's Dugges are always going to give you a solid New England, and I feel this month we're actually getting to review some single IPAs rather than big double ones, which we've had in recent times as well. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about this beer in this video, so I think we can leave it there. This one was the Orbital Dreamboat, a 6.5% New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Dugges Bryggeri in Landvetter on the outskirts of Gothenburg, Göteborg here in Sweden, and brewed in collaboration with Fuerst Wiacek from Siemensstadt in Berlin down in Germany. Like I say, we will do a dedicated review to a Fuerst Wiacek beer at some point very soon. But yeah, we'll wait for the right one to appear before we do that as well. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dugges Bryggeri as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys at some point very, very soon. So yeah, check out my social media, check out Dugges and Fuerst Wiacek's social media. Have a go at some of both of their beers. And I'll see you again very, very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, prost.